Mysteries of Maraudon. For more than a millennium, Tauren tribes and the Centaur had fought a vicious war, leaving countless dead on both sides. The only respite had come recently, when the Tauren had joined the Horde. War Chief Thrall had made sure that his new allies were protected. Any Centaur who defied their borders were taught a very painful lesson. For years, that had curtailed hostilities. Most of the Centaur had retreated to the lifeless region of Desolus. Meanwhile, the Tauren looked toward a bright future in the new home, Thunderbluff. Yet, the reappearance of the Centaur shattered any hope of peace. Their warbonds swarmed out of Desolus and laid waste to the surrounding regions. Thrall called on the emerging heroes of his faction to handle this disturbance and put it to rest for good. The Horde's forces quickly discovered that the various Centaur tribes were slaughtering each other just as often as they were attacking outsiders. When they investigated further, they encountered a Centaur named Warg, a leader of the Morgrem tribe. Warg told the Horde that Desolate had been corrupted, and that the source of the corruption lay in a place called Maraudon. It was sacred ground to the Centaur. It was also home to the earth elemental known as Princess Theradras, and the spirit of her fallen mate, a keeper of the grove named Satar. Legends told that these two beings were the progenitors of the barbaric Centaur race. Theradras loved the Centaur, and she worried that the Horde's rise to power might eventually drive them to extinction. After years of hostilities with the orcs and their allies, she had acted to save her progeny. She had infused the Centaur with her power, driving them to make war and claim new territories outside Desolus. Most of the Centaur tribes were deeply loyal to Princess Theradras, yet the Morgrem had no such loyalty, and thus they were perfect allies for the Horde. The Horde helped suppress the other violent tribes, and then its champion turned their gaze on Maraudon itself. They journeyed into the depths of the burial ground and defeated every creature inside it, including Theradras. Their victory ended the spreading corruption in Desolus and erased the violent bloodlust in the Centaur. With the Horde's blessing, Warog and his Morgrem tribe became the rulers of the united Centaur and led them to an age of tranquility. Yet, no one knew how long they would stay on the path of peace. The ruins of Dire Maul. Scarcely had the Horde settled the crisis in Desolus when a new source of darkness emerged. Deep within the southern forests of Feralas, ogre raiding parties were razing settlements and villages, as well as waylaying any travelers unfortunate enough to cross their path. Druids also sensed corruption and decay twisting in the wilds. After a series of skirmishes throughout Feralas, the Horde learned that the source of both troubles was in Dire Maul, the ruined elven city once known as Eldrith Alas. Almost 15 years earlier, an ogre leader known as Gordok had led his clan, the Gorduni, to Dire Maul. Not only had they survived the aftermath of the Second War, but they had thrived. The Gorduni had turned Dire Maul into a gladiatorial arena, which proved to be quite popular among the mercenaries and miscreants of the world. Gordok had always been a cruel and ruthless leader, but terrible whispers now plagued his mind, urging him to madness and slaughter. He had commanded his clan to indiscriminately murder anyone they could find. The Horde dispatched his forces to scour the Gorduni from Dire Maul. They had expected only to kill Gordok and end his reign of madness, but once they arrived, they discovered two different sources of corruption lurking in the city. The first was the Emerald Nightmare. The dark energy of the old gods had slipped past the Emerald Dream's borders and manifested in the physical world. It was this power that had driven Gordok to insanity, and the Horde's champions knew that eradicating it was the only way to spare Feralas. The second source of corruption shocked those who explored Dire Maul. A secretive group of elves, the Chandralar, were living deep in the bones of the city. Their presence did not raise alarms at first, for they did not seem hostile. Yet, when the Hordes discovered that the elves had imprisoned a demon named Ingmalthar and were feeding on his power, there was no choice but to act. the Horde banished Imbolthar to the twisting nether. In doing so, they cut off the elves' source of power and incurred their wrath. The Chandralar's leader, Prince Torthildrin, personally led the counterattack against the Horde, but he could not restore Imbolthar or claim vengeance. He fell to the Horde's blades, and Dire Maul became his tomb. The remnants of the elves fled Dire Maul for good. They spent years wandering the wilds, trying to wean themselves of demonic power and feel whole again. Assault on Blackwing Lair. Far from Dire Maul, uncertainty reigned over Blackrock Mountain. Ragnaros was defeated. He and his elemental minions had been banished back to the Firelands. The adventurers who had triumphed over him returned home to enjoy the spoils of victory, believing that the dangers within the Blackrock Mountain had been extinguished. Moira Thoresen knew better. Her people had been freed from the elementals, but now they were exposed to a frightening new foe. Ragnaros had controlled only the lower half of Blackrock Mountain. The upper half belonged to Deathwing's son, Nefarian, and other members of the Black Dragonflight. Though both sides served the old gods, they were not truly allies. For more than a decade, a tenuous truce had prevented the minions of fire from warring with the remnants of Deathwing's brood. Nefarian had kept his presence shrouded, relying on unusual allies to protect his territory. The True Horde, led by Dal'Rand Blackhand, had never accepted Orgrim Doomhammer's rule after the First War, and certainly had no interest in recognizing Thrall as the Horde's new leader. Unable to openly make war against the armies of Orgrimmar, Dal'Rand's Horde had bided their name to the stronghold of Blackrock Spire. In exchange for the True Horde's allegiance, Nefarian had promised that the powers of the Black Dragonflight would fight on their behalf against Thrall and his Horde. It was an empty promise. Nefarian had little interest in trifling in a meaningless civil war. He had much more frightening goals. Nefarian had carried on his father's work of revitalizing and empowering the Black Dragonflight. He subjected capturing dragons to torturous rituals, hoping to tease out unexplored power by combining the blood of different flights. His experiments were horrific, brutal, and eventually effective. For years, the spawn of this new chromatic dragonflight, consisting of blood from all 5 flights, had died before hatching. Eventually, a few began to survive, then a few more. Nefarian believed he was on the verge of ensuring their survival, and he eagerly set his minions to prepare a clutch that would hatch an entire generation of this flight. The potential within them was greater than anything he could ever had hoped for, but for the moment, they were still vulnerable. Only a few had reached maturity and could defend themselves. As the Black Dragonflight stirred, Moira Thoresen plotted to save her people. She knew she did not have long. Before Nefarian would turn his power upon the region, he would certainly conquer Ragnaros' old lair and wipe out the Dark Irons. Moira had been impressed by the ferocity of the champions who had ended the Fire Lord's reign. Once again, she had her people send information to the far corners of Azeroth, telling the world that Dal'Rand's Horde had allied with the Black Dragonflight. Her spies made sure that this knowledge found its way to Orgrimmar. As she expected, it immediately caused an uproar among the leadership of the Horde. Thrall had known about the True Horde for years, but he had never imagined that they posed any real danger. If Dal'Rand Blackhand was foolish enough to trust the son of Deathwing, there was little time to waste. Some of the Horde's emerging champions traveled to the Eastern Kingdom to settle the matter for good. Dal'Rand personally joined the defense of Blackrock Spire. Though he was a mighty warrior, the heroes he faced were mightier still. The self-proclaimed leader of the True Horde died in his stronghold. The rest of his followers scattered, depriving the Blackrock Dragonflight of their protectors. Nefarian turned his wrath on the Horde intruders, but they did not flee. They cut their way through the endless waves of Nefarian's twisted creatures until he too fell to their strength and persistence. The Horde champions took Nefarian's head as proof of their victory and returned to Orgrimmar as conquering heroes. As far as the citizens of Azeroth knew, The Black Dragonflight's last bastion of power had just been razed, never to return.